As is on the chat as well now.
I'm. Hi guys, so sorry for the technical difficulties. Pras, can you check if we're live?
Um,
Okay, we're
yep.
live. Guys, hello and welcome to a new episode of the Burning Question series by Fantasy Football Scout. In this series, Pras and I, Sonaldo, talk about the key hot topics for the week. Really apologize, guys, for the technical difficulties. I'm still learning this process, and hopefully they no more technical difficulties in the future. But Pras, it's very nice to see you. Welcome.
Very nice to see you as well, and it's good to get going. I'm actually checking myself if everything is working. Can
Yes.
everyone hear us?
Yep, we're good to go. Shout out to Az. You are the man. I know he ran home to help us out. So
Poor guy was driving, and he had to. We hounded him to come home quickly. So thank you very much, Az.
Yes, thank you very much, Az. Before we get to the topics for today, I'm very excited for today's episode. I want to start with this price reveal for the new Aston Villa wonder boy, Philippe Coutinho, who is back in the Premier League. I'm very excited for this. Nostalgia, Liverpool days, and hopefully Stevie G can get him going, and hopefully we see the best of Coutinho. I mean, Aston Villa have been doing a great job with this transfer window. Looks like they have Digne in, and Bissouma is also, I'm not sure if he's confirmed, but if they get those three, I would be ecstatic as an Aston Villa fan. What are your thoughts on Coutinho, Pras?
Yeah, look, I mean, he's been priced really nicely. 7 million is a good price. I was fearing usually when there's some kind of a brand, like Tony or Sancho, when you come with a known brand, sometimes FPL just decides to add a million. And that doesn't look like it's happened with Coutinho. He's now at a price that's lower than Ings and Watkins. So it gives you an option. Very early days to obviously say how Coutinho does. The early talks are he could play in the in the midfield three, which would be basically playing in the Ramsey role right now, which is fine. It's fairly attacking, but then the more exciting role would be if he takes the Bundia or the Watkins position on the left or the right, and that then basically means you've got a Villa attacker for 7 million, who's got a shot in him from the distance like Coutinho does. So all very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, quickly on Aston Villa, there's a lot to speculate, and I wouldn't rush into assessing who the best assets will be. Obviously, these three transfers will switch the formation. They're playing like this Christmas tree formation right now, but I'm very interested to see how they do. Plus, Aston Villa have a good chance of a double game week in 23. So things we will discuss as we move towards today's topics. Before you introduce the topics, Pras, quickly what we'll talk about today is, the windows until game week 38 and when to play the free hit chips and other chips, factors to consider when we play the free hit, as well as common themes from game week 22 free hits. We'll be looking at a couple of free hit teams for game week 22 and then creating sort of a template. And the idea is to help us kind of think through some transfers that we'll attack this game week, and if it's not worth it, maybe we think for the future and try to get transfers for single game week players later down the line. So Pras, do you want to kind of introduce the first portion? And we have Lego Mane's table up here.
Yeah. So the idea for the listeners is we will talk about the free hit in general and how you should be thinking about the free hit over the period. So it's going to be a helicopter view first on how are the chips looking like. If you were to play it, what would the windows be? Then we get into the next level, which is what do you need to consider if you have to play a free hit? Do you decide based on how many chips you've got left and other factors? And then we'll come to the drafts, like you said. So I'm going to start with this helicopter view of this Lego Mane chart. And for me, this is the ideal way, rather than just kind of reacting to what a Ben Krellin or a Lego Mane or Planet FPL, they're telling you. You can actually have a view yourself on how things are shaping up. And so, for example, this chart shows you when the future blanks will be. And there are obviously postponements that come up, which are rescheduled, that create blanks and doubles. But over the seasons past, the way it has worked is you have a very clear view what blanks will come up and for what reason. So, for example, game week 27, you already know that Liverpool and Arsenal will blank. So why will those two teams blank? It's because one of them will surely make it to the final of the Carabao Cup because they're obviously in the semi-finals. And the fixture in game week 27 was Liverpool versus Arsenal. So either of the teams making into the final basically means that that fixture will not happen. So knowing this already has implications on what is your future transfer strategy. Do you go for a Salah before? Maybe you wait. I'm not suggesting you do because there's a potential double before. But for Arsenal assets and other aspects, you need to kind of have that big picture view. It's also possible that Chelsea blank in that same week because they are leading 2-0 in their Carabao Cup semi-final. So Chelsea, Liverpool, and Arsenal blanking, basically that means you need to plan for that. And then you go forward. Then you go to game week 30. That's the big blank that usually always happens during the 29-30 window. So this year it's going to be game week 30. What do you need to know about this? You need to know that you need to watch what the draw for the FA Cup quarterfinal is. So obviously right now we've just had round 3. We have a round 4 already where a lot of the Premier League teams have got favorable home fixtures. What that means is a lot of these teams will go into the next round, and only then we'll know the draw for the FA Cup quarterfinal. But what you need to basically keep an eye on, which are the teams that have already been knocked out. So for example, for game week 30, we know that the Villa-Arsenal game is going ahead. And that's big news. Why is it big news? Is because if, for example, Villa double, like you mentioned at the beginning of the stream, if they're doubling in the next week, then suddenly you can basically, you don't need to free hit in 30. You can just dead end your team for 30 because you can load up on Villa assets. Let's say you get 2 or 3 next week and you just dead end because you'll have 3 players in 30 already. And then add to that maybe a Martinelli or a Ramsdale that you have. You're already 5 out of your 11 are set for game week 30. So what I wanted to do is give people just this big picture idea of where we're heading in the season. And yes, you may argue that, look, there's so much uncertainty. We just don't know which fixture is postponed. But actually, to be honest, there's a lot that we do know and a lot that we can plan for. So moving forward, I talked about 27. I talked about 30. The next big week that people need to keep in mind is game week 33. Game week 33 is the week of the FA Cup semi-final. Now, if you look on the right of this, and sorry, podcast listeners, but there's a column on the right, which is basically the midweek of that same game week. That's completely empty. So game week 33 is usually a game week where you have blanks caused by the FA Cup semi-final. But then some of those blanks, if they can be rescheduled, you have the same one. Basically, it moves into the midweek. Or if there's a conflict and you can't, what you have is sometimes a very peculiar situation where you have doubles and blanks. So some big teams that are in the semi-final could blank and some smaller teams could actually double. So it's another interesting week if you were looking at a free hit that you could basically just load up on the doublers and not have to worry about the blankers. And then the last but not least is game week 36. Game week 36, again, if you look on the right of this, completely free, no European midweek. It's basically typically been the darling week for bench boost for a lot of the legacy managers who are willing to wait it out until that time. Why? Because pretty much any postponed fixtures would go into that midweek. So that will be a mega double. Now, there will be other doubles in the middle. There will be some blanks in the middle, which I know, Sonaldo, you'll talk about in a second. But when you think about free hit, if you've already used one, think about, do I want to use it for game week 27, where I want to basically boomerang out of Salah and my Arsenal assets and then come back? Do I want to keep it for 30, where I don't want to, buy assets, double ups from Burnley, Watford, Newcastle, who are not in the semi-finals and in the quarterfinals? Or do I want to basically use that for the free hit or game week 33? So these are all options that are open. A lot of this can be planned. And that's essentially what we wanted to show from this big picture chart. So any thoughts there? Anything else to add from you, Sonaldo?
I think you summarized it very, very well. This helicopter view of this chart, and again, for podcast listeners and YouTube viewers, maybe on your phone or smaller screen, this will be very hard to actually digest. So I do recommend you go visit Legomane's Twitter page and you can see a full version of this. It may be very difficult to kind of decipher a table like this because there's so much going on. But if you do take the time to look into it, it'll sort of clarify a lot of your long-term planning. Caveat, of course, there's a lot of changes happening as we speak. So, things will move and we have to be adaptable, but you still want to have sort of a big picture idea for sure. So the points that Pras made, if I can kind of simplify it, is game week 27 and game week 30 will be not essential, but very key blank game weeks. So for me personally, I think the safe pragmatic strategy would be to use the free hits during that time, and we'll discuss more about it. The likely double game weeks will be 33, 36, and possibly 37. 36 being the key one. 33, possibly more of an underwhelming double game week. And again, 23 may be a double game week for the likes of Aston Villa. So a lot to digest there. Another kind of summary to process points is you have to kind of look so team dependent right now. So many, managers have different situations, values, players, so chip strategies. So you have to be kind of looking into the big picture and deciding on your own on what's the best strategies for you. So first thing you look at is the number of chips you have and how you will navigate the essential game week 30 blank. Will you dead end or free hit, as Pras mentioned? And if yes, then, as you said, several Villa, Salah, and City players will own, and all chips left and few doublers. So kind of see where you're at that point. So for me, currently, my thinking is the safe strategy is to use the free hits 27 and 30 and save the bench boost for a double game week 36. I think that is a very standard sort of approach for everybody. How about yourself, Pras? Do you have kind of an idea of what you want to do?
So my strategy is absent any further information, news. And by the way, we'll also talk about people with not having two free hits. I mean, you and I are in a privileged position where we haven't used a free hit yet. Not everyone is in that position. Mm-hmm. So if I was, so for me particularly, I am looking at a free hit definitely in 30. That will be the very ugly blank. And the second one, I'm open. It could be 27. It could be 33. I'm definitely not using it this week. And we will talk about in the next section, what are the things you should be thinking about if you were to decide to free hit this week. And by the way, it doesn't matter. You can always navigate a particular week by either taking some hits, by benching. For example, 27, somebody may say, guys, why are you making it a big deal? Just bench Salah and Trent and just put out 9 or 10 players. Fine, do that. That's okay. So no particular week is the week that you have to do it. But for example, for me, because I have two, definitely one in 30 and one, whether it's in 27 or 33, TBD. Bench boost, I'm actually more open this year because rightly so, most of us have now a stacked bench, maybe even a second keeper, which is the case for me. So actually, we don't have to think about this big double for the bench boost because ultimately people overplay the bench boost too much or overplan for the bench boost too much. Ultimately, it's your 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th player that is getting you points. Usually they don't have the best fixtures, otherwise you wouldn't have benched them. So expecting anything more than 15 to 20 points from the bench boost anyway isn't that, is too optimistic anyway. So if you're talking about 15 points, if you see a week where your bench is full, you're having like 3 benching headaches, it may be fine to play it. I mean, so I continue to be open with the bench boost chip. I don't want to define my whole strategy with it. But given that we have 2 free hits, and for me, free hit is clearly the best chip in the game, most upside, we have to really think about how to plan and when to play it. Don't just spunk it because right now you think your team doesn't look as nice as some of the other teams. Don't just use it. It has to be relative to another time and how you will plan for it at that point.
Yeah, let me quickly add to this. So let's say... Apologies, guys. We lost Pras there. Oh, man, it's been a nightmare, guys. Give me 1 minute. Thank you for bearing with me. Okay, we're back. Pras, you hear me?
I don't know what's happening now. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
I'm back.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to add on to... Oh, man, what a day. I'm going to add on to what Pras said. Basically, in the situation that, let's say, you have one free hit and your wild card's still in play, I certainly would advise to keep holding onto your free hit because... ideally, game week 30, as Pras mentioned, will be a big blank game week. And in game week 30, what's happening is as Pras mentioned, the FA Cup quarterfinals. And last year, for example, 6 of the 8 teams were top tier teams. And thank you guys for the supportive comments in the chat. Oh man, okay. So because of that, if you have one free hit left, then ideally you want to save it for game week 30. And to get to a game week 30 blank, to navigate around game week 30 using your free hit, you can use free transfers as well as some hits. And then you would ideally wildcard between 31 to possibly 34, 35, and then double, bench boost in 33, 36, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of what I would do with one chip, one free hit. How about yourself, Pras?
Yeah, same. I agree. With the obvious caveat, look at your team, decide every week whether this is the right play for you. And we're just giving you the big picture view simply so that you can navigate it best. I mean, for example, let's say Villa get a double next week. My strategy will completely change. I'm not going to then look to free hit in 30. I'm going to look to dead end my team because I'll just double up, triple up on Villa next week. And then I'll have 5 players for game week 30 already. So every week, this is going to change. Let's not fixate on this is the way I will play and this is the only way. For me, every week, as we get more information on the doubles, on how things are playing out, you kind of, both of us were trying to bench boost this week. And in the end, we decided, look, maybe it's not the best week. Son's injured, James is injured. Let's not do it. That's absolutely fine as well. So every team, you need to kind of reevaluate every time you get news on doubles on what is my strategy. And that's what we would recommend. And this is why we spent the time after this slide kind of explaining to you what would be the thought process to think, should I free hit in 22 or not? So we'll come to that in a second. But I wanted to also spend a minute on this slide to make people feel better that in the top 10K, 40% of people have already used a free hit. So don't think that suddenly I'm in a tough spot because I've used a free hit. Now my team doesn't look so great. Well, a lot of people have used one free hit already, and some are looking at it again in game week 22. So I wouldn't, think that you have to have 2 free hits to navigate the future. So that's one comment, and that's what we wanted to show you by just this top 10K list. By the way, this is from Live FPL. I don't need to introduce Ragaboli, an amazing site. So just to see how the chip usage has been is just a good anchor to have.
So I also wanted to add this section quickly before we move on, and it's basically the Aston Villa possibility of a double in game week 23. Now, there's about a 50% chance of this happening, so take it as you will. Obviously, nothing has been confirmed, but a lot of people on Twitter have been asking me, what should we do with Watkins? Because people are trying to move Watkins out, and I've actually been saying I don't think I would move Watkins out, because if this double happens, for example, in 23. And so ABC are the 3 options, but B is most likely to happen because of this Amazon TV fixture issue. So if that does happen, the double, it would be for Everton, for Aston Villa, it would be Everton and Burnley, which sounds very, very enticing. And that's followed by Leeds, Newcastle, and Watford. So a stretch of fantastic fixtures for Aston Villa, new signings, revival of some energy, Stevie G, Coutinho. Lots to take in, and they've been playing very well. And Watkins played very, very well the other day. Plus, Ings has been playing very well. Buendina's been looking good. Matty Cash. There's some outstanding options in Aston Villa, and I'm keen on bringing an Aston Villa player in very, very soon. So things to consider. By the way, this percentage was done by Mikhail Tokvam on Twitter. So do give him a follow if you do want to.
So by the way, this is one of the trickiest dilemmas. You're right. This game week, which is what strikers to have. Some people have DCL, who plays Norwich. You have Watkins, who made double. You have obviously Dennis and King. You have Antonio, who plays Leeds. So actually, there's many good striking options. And then, of course, you have Kane and Ronaldo, who people are looking to captain. But I can assure you, if you don't have Kane or Ronaldo, don't get FOMO, because even the ones like me and Sonaldo who are looking to captain Kane and Ronaldo respectively, we're not very confident in them. So, you're kind of picking the best out of a bad bunch, to be honest. That's my feeling. And that was, we're captaining Ronaldo, but I'm personally not convinced at all. So I think, is that the same for you as well? Or are you convinced on Kane?
I mean, most likely it's on Kane, but certainly I'm not confident at all. I think there's no obvious pick this week, so for me it's just Kane because I don't have Ronaldo.
So, by the way, Harry's on the chat. Hi, Harry. He's asking if he should sell Antonio or Watkins to get Dennis, or don't get Dennis. Very difficult. What do you think?
I think I would sell Antonio and get Dennis in. I'm assuming he doesn't have King, and I really like the look of Watkins from 23. Yeah. I mean, Antonio also has good fixtures, and his ownership is ridiculously high. So,
I would also say sell on. I mean, obviously, we watch him today. If he completely goes crazy against Norwich, then
true.
the old Antonio is back. Of course, we also watch injuries and other things, but I think out of the two, just given how good their fixtures look, Villa's, and the fact that they don't blank in 30, also gives an option. I know Harry has 2 free hits left, and he may look to free hit in 30, but I would still keep the optionality and sell Antonio because they have no more doubles coming up.
I will also kind of put out a hot take here. I think by game week 23, a lot of us will be looking. I think he's going to become more one of the more popular transfer options in Ollie Watkins. So, advantage if you have him then. So I'm thinking that. But yeah, let's just show the viewers what we have and podcast listeners, the top 10K most owned players. Foster, De Gea in goal as suspected. Trent, Cancelo, Livramento, Alonso, Reguilon. Livramento's still up there in terms of EO. This guy, man. And then in the midfield, we have Bowen, Jota, Son. And Son is going to be a very popular issue and topic that we will discuss. Foden, who also comes into the picture in game week 23. So another single game weeker that's getting in the way of bringing these double game weekers this week. And then we have Gray, who was supposed to be a double game weeker in 21, but the Everton game got canceled. And then up top, we have Antonio, Dennis, and Watkins. Straight from this, the ownership of Antonio in the top 10K is 83%. So something to consider. Son, 68%. Jota, Bowen, very high as we expect, but Jota, Bowen probably not going anywhere. So the Son and Antonio one is the ones that stand out to me. Pras, anything noted here? Mm-hmm.
Well, what I was noting, the reason why I included this is just to show people that people are actually well set up for 22.
Yeah.
They have De Gea, which most people have on free hit. They have Trent, Alonso, Reguilon, which a lot of people have on free hit. I mean, you could argue Alonso could become somebody else, but he has a double. Bowen, Jota, it used to be Son, but now let's say Son becomes a Maddison, all on free hit. Then you have Dennis on a free hit, and then a Watkins or an Antonio can become Kane or Ronaldo. So the top 10K is actually very well set up. So I don't think, the chart that we showed in terms of free hit usage, I don't think that free hit is going to go up materially higher from the 40%. People who are already set up, and I'm actually surprised to see that Salah is no longer on. So a lot of people have, and this was as of game week 21, by the way. So this is at the time when he was playing Chelsea. People just don't own Salah as much anymore. So therefore, people will be well set up. So as you think about using your free hit, you really have to be materially different from this. And why are we using top 10K? It's not that everyone has to be in the top 10K. It's just a barometer to test ourselves on where are basically the managers who we want to catch up. What are they doing? So that's the idea of showing this. And just so you can calibrate yourself on how far I am from this team. And then you can also decide if you should be free hitting this week or not. I mean, if you've got 1 or 2 doublers and 3 or 4 injuries, then think about a free hit. Otherwise, if you can get to a team that is closer to this, then just leave it.
Yeah. Essentially, what you're speaking is completely correct. And there's a lot of single game weekers this week with good fixtures that is already in our teams as in the template. Is I think the point that you're trying to make. So
Absolutely.
Lots to consider for the free hit this week. And the upside is very iffy. So we'll what we're gonna do now is present to you 4 free hit teams from this week from the community, literally from the community. So one of the things we want to do with Burning Question series is to kind of engage more with FPL Twitter as well as more managers from all different backgrounds, and hopefully we will be better at that as we go on. And then to summarize those free hits, we're going to show kind of a template free hit. And as we show that template free hit, we'll also discuss Sun replacements at the end. So the first thing I want to show is...
Before you load that up, Sonaldo, can I just make one other point?
Go ahead.
So we said we're going to talk about key considerations, whether you should think about a free hit this week or not. So obviously, number one thing you need to think about is, what is your strategy for 30? So let's say you have one free hit left, and I'm speaking to especially those guys who've got one free hit left. Think about what is your strategy for game week 30 if you use up your second free hit this week, number one. Number two, if you have two free hits left, are you a manager that is going to dead end or not? Or are you going to use it on, basically going back to our first discussion? So think about your chip play. Play the free hit if you've got, let's say, several Villa players, you've still got Salah, you've got lots of City players. Why? Because these are the players people will target from next week. From next week, I can guarantee you City players will be the most bought. Salah won't be bought next week, but the week after, and Villa players will be the most bought. So if your team already has them, this is what we were telling Harry as well in his question. If you're going to sell, let's say, a Salah, Foden, and a Watkins for a Maddison, Bruno, and Ronaldo, what you're basically doing is just getting players for this week, and then next week you'll be reversing these transfers. So if you're in a position where you have lots of Villa, you have City players and Salah, or of course not all, but a combination of this, I think you should think about a free hit. You obviously also need to consider the single game weekers. If you are already on the boat with Jota, Trent, Bowen, Antonio, don't play the free hit. That's fine. Again, if you've got lots of injuries, like James, Son, Livramento, this problem won't be fixed by a free hit. So don't think just because my team doesn't look so great, I'll play a free hit. Well, next week it won't look so great either. So maybe think about a hit or two, getting these long-term injured players out and getting people who you are willing to hold longer term. So that's what I wanted to say. And then second, before you go to the section of sharing the free hit, this is applicable for those guys who are also not on free hit. So please don't think that we're only discussing or talking to the people who are looking at a free hit in 22. By looking at what people are going for on a free hit, you can think about my Son replacement or the defender I should target, or, should I really be going for a Son to a Kane or Ronaldo kind of move in a double transfer. So those are the things we wanted to kind of get out.
Yeah, well put there. I mean, again, I'll emphasize the points that come game week 23, we're going to want some Aston Villa, possibly, and Man City assets for sure. And, that's a whole topic we'll discuss next week. But for me personally, I'm already eyeing a double up in the Man City defense instead of going to Foden or possibly get all three options there. So lots more substance coming next week, and very excited for that. So well put there. Let's go to the free hit teams. Okay, the first one we have here is... by the way, there's so many people that were commenting their free hit team. So really thank you guys for that. I just, obviously couldn't share everything. So I'm sharing a couple. And again, this is to help us kind of get an idea of what managers are going for this game week on a free hit. So FPL AJ, who is a big Liverpool fan, shared his free hit team here. For the podcast listeners, De Gea, Alonso, which again is a template pick that's probably in a lot of our teams already. Trent, who's also a single game weeker, and then his differentials, I think, for the free hit will be Sanchez, Lowton, and Cucurella, all very solid, popular picks in the free hit. Midfield, Jota, another template pick. Bowen, another template single game weaker. And then his three differentials are Lucas Moura, Maddison, and Tielemans. And that's very, very interesting because there's this whole, topic about what Leicester assets to go for. And personally, Maddison is the standout for me. And I would go for a Lookman as a second option, but Tielemans, who's on penalties, is also a very, very popular option. And up top, obviously, he has Kane, Ronaldo, and Dennis. Dennis is a great shout this week, and it seems like the idea of a free hit is to maximize the upside. So I do agree you should go for Kane and Ronaldo both if you're on a free hit. Do you see anything you want to comment on this free hit team? It looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, it looks pretty good, reasonably template. So I mean, one of the topics that we wanted to bring out is what are the key themes coming from all these free hit drafts, which I also thank everyone for sharing. Yeah, so I agree. I think that the front line of Kane, Ronaldo, Dennis, or King, and the back line, which is the goalkeeper, De Gea, that's actually very template. Everyone has gone for that. I think the real difference comes in the third or fourth defender and the third or fourth midfielder. And that's where people have basically started to differentiate whether they go for Bowen as a single game weaker, they go for Lucas Moura, Tillemans, Madison. Those are the options. And this is why at some point we'll come to this table where I compare the 4 Leicester Mids just to see, who could fit there and whether you go for 1 or 2. And then we also look at a little bit on defenders on who we think is value. By the way, no draft that I've seen has Robertson in it. And I'm very surprised because Robertson has the best fixture. He's a single game weaker, but has very good upside, especially compared to a Burnley defender. I mean, come on. So that's where I would be if I was in a free hit. But look, I like this free hit a lot. There's not a lot different you can do, like I said, other than these 4 positions: third, fourth defender, third, fourth mid.
And the double up, the double up of Ronaldo and Kane is probably supposedly, in theory, the best advantage you can get over non-free hitters. And Alfazi, Chris, our main guy, asked a good question. Do you think the Leicester team will go out on Saturday? Again, yeah, we don't know. I mean, they delayed the last game, so we'll see. Do you think they'll play? Pras?
So Sam Martin on Twitter, he's obviously a Leicester guy. Not many people I call ITKs, but he's truly one. So he basically thinks that a few people will be coming back, like Daka, maybe Soyuncu. So they will be better. But of course, look, like anything else, watch for the press conferences. If you're on a free hit and they're still vague about it on Friday, just go for maybe the 1 mid, have a solid bench, because actually I think the big upside on the free hit is, and it seems harsh to say, but let's say the Liverpool game or some other game that is template in other teams that are not free hitting gets postponed, then you have a nice bench where you have a Cucurella or a Loughton to come on, or maybe even a Bowen, and they can basically substitute when everyone else has gone Son to Maddison. So it's not the end of the world. Watch for press conferences, but as it looks like, I think the Leicester game would go ahead. But look, we're living in a world where you can't say for certain anything.
A quick word on Cucurella versus Lamptey. I know I spoke to Az on the deadline stream, who's obviously the Brighton fan, and I'm sure most people know this, but Cucurella is obviously the safer pick, but the upside I do believe is in Lamptey, so something to consider there. The Loughton one, I'm sure he'll bench. I don't know, maybe he'll play him because it's double, but AJ, thank you so much for sharing your team. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, we have FPL Swede, who's also a very popular figure on Twitter, and thanks again for sharing your team, FPL Swede. So a very, very similar looking team, De Gea. I think the backline's almost the same, except he has a Watford defender. Jota, Drewberry Hall, okay. Barnes, Madison, nice. Lucas Moura. Bench, yep. Kane, Ronaldo, King. So, again, very similar themes. Kane, Ronaldo in there. King instead of Dennis. Very, very interesting. And actually, I asked FPL Swede about his thoughts, and he gave me some context, so I'll read it out real quick. He says, sure. Kane captain because the form under Conte and previous history against opponents. Jota and Trent stay because of how Brentford has looked recently, and I don't see better options than them. I'm reading this word for word, by the way. Alonso doesn't have great fixtures, but he is very attacking regardless. If they play Man City or Newcastle, he will still attack. And that's fantastic because I already have Alonso in my team. Cucurella is secure for 90 minutes, as mentioned previously, and back-to-back home games for a good defense. Sounds like a good shout. Maddison is an obvious pick. I also agree. Maddison is the standout Leicester pick for me. And then Barnes is an outsider. Interesting. Very interesting that he shouted out Barnes because personally, I don't think I would go there. He says, I love that Burnley fixture and I have a very soft spot for Barnes, I have to admit. He has been showing up recently, okay, makes sense now, and looked direct against Watford and think he's a better option than Lookman once he is moved to the right. Interesting because I prefer Lookman over Barnes. Finally, King over Dennis because of Pens and the early sub recently for Dennis. Think King is more secure. So really nice to have sort of not super diverse, but some different options here. Thanks again for sharing. Anything you want to comment on this? Anything you would change or?
Again, very hard to go against any of these picks. I think a Spurs defender would be nice. That maybe instead of a Brighton defender, but maybe funds is an issue there. But no, other than that, look, do we have that page on the 4 Leicester Mids? Maybe let's just talk about the Leicester Mids because this will keep coming up. And let's just show the statistics for the last 6 weeks.
Yep, let's do it. It's up. By the way, I looked at the recent positioning, average positioning, and sort of heat map for Maddison. He's the most upfront guy. You know, his form is good too. He's getting points and really, really attacking. So yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah. So on the Leicester Mids, the idea is there's a little bit of a shape shift that we need to kind of keep in mind. So now, obviously, it's a striker. It's one guy up top. So ever since Vardy's been injured, they're not trying this Vardy Iheanacho experiment. It's basically back to one up top, which was Lookman, by the way, in the FA Cup. And then you play three behind them, which is the Barnes, Maddison, and in this case was Perez. Now, what we expect will happen is once Daka is coming back from injury, and we think that if not in the first game, but he will be back in the double. A lot of rumors that actually he may even be back for the first. So if that happens, I think the Lookman appeal completely is gone. So if you get news that Daka is not fit for the Burnley game, go for Lookman. I think then he's completely worth it for the free hitters, because a lot of the non-free hitters will not go for him because Lookman won't be the long-term better pick. Excuse me. If you're going for the long-term pick, I agree it's Maddison. If you look at the stats over the last 6, he's got the best XGI after Tielemans. And Tielemans is like your KDB type role, right? I mean, he's involved in the assists. He's been okay. He's on set pieces. He's obviously on penalties. So if I was to pick 2, I would pick Tielemans and Maddison, only because Lookman may get moved. If I was to pick 1, it would be Maddison. That's where I'm at. I would honestly think that if Daka is completely fit, and maybe we don't hear this, but if Brendan Rodgers says that Daka is fit to start, he's the best pick out of all of them because he's very direct. He's obviously the striker. But then the question is, do we have space up front to accommodate him? But that's just basically our thinking. I would rank it as Maddison number 1, Tielemans number 2, Barnes 3, and Lookman 4. But that is provided Daka is fit. How would you rank it?
I think I would go Maddison, Lookman, Tielemans, and then Barnes personally.
I think there's a lot of negative bias with Barnes, right? For a lot of the hurt he gave to FPL managers early season. But look, I think he's a decent shout as well. This is the problem with figuring out Leicester when it's not a team that we've seen play together a lot because there's no Vardy. And one of the big shames of the Everton game being postponed from yesterday is the fact that we didn't get to see another game with Leicester and how they shape up. But yeah, I think they'll be popular. I would just say for people who are looking at a Son replacement, who are not on free hit, I think it's a decent move to look at a Maddison or a Tielemans or anyone we've talked about here. But don't forget there are other options. Don't get your double game week blinkers and only think about double game week players. I mean, you could easily think of going, let's say if money is not a problem, go to KDB because KDB will start against, for sure, he'll start against Chelsea, maybe even in the false 9. That's where Pep has played him in the past. Go for KDB because after that, he's got 3 amazing fixtures. Maybe a Foden, maybe even a Bruno. Bruno has the double. We haven't talked about Man United a lot. They have not looked good at all. So I'm not going to give you a Man United spiel on go for Man United assets. I don't think they're looking very good at all, attacking wise, especially defensive wise, also pathetic. But the thing is, in the last game, we moved to this formation with back to 3 midfielders. In fact, we also experimented with the diamond at the end of the game. In all of these formations, Bruno will be essential. Whether he's in the points or not is a different story. But this, a week ago we were saying, is Bruno even nailed if we go with the 4-2-2-2? He should be nailed. Whether you want to put that money into him is another question. But remember, we're just parking money right now for Salah to come back and take his position back. So it's only for a couple of game weeks. So that's another thing to consider. I don't want to make it into a Leicester only conversation. It's quite fair if you're on a free hit to only look at Leicester players as your third, fourth mids. But for us who are not on a free hit, there's many other options. Don't just look at the Leicester mids.
I think this is a good time to add this. So let's understand Son's situation right now. And Son's situation is, from Conte's interview, basically he's not going to train until after the international break, which is past game week, I think 24. So basically he has to go. Yet I think the other day on Ted's stream, I said that I had a sneaky feeling he might be back, and sure, he might be back early, but we have enough evidence that he's not going to be back for a while. And Gianni also mentioned that Italian managers in general are pretty upfront and truthful with their interviews. So we have to really assume that Son is gone for a while, which means we need to replace him. And I don't think it's a simple question of who is the best replacement right now. I think when it comes to Son, you have to decide. Let's say you don't have Salah. Do you want to, upgrade to the likes of Bruno, who seems like a very, very popular shout right now? And again, as you mentioned, Pras, there's not enough evidence for us to go to a Man United asset, especially someone like Bruno, who's super expensive. But there are definitely pros to going to Bruno because he has a double. He has good fixtures moving forward. He's a key part of that team, likely. And possibly sometimes you have to try to predict where the points that are going to come in the future. So this is kind of one of those situations where the evidence is limited, but maybe he does bang this game week. So do you do that? Do you go for a KDB, who's going to be great from game week 23 and also a perfect price holder for Salah, but maybe you want to keep KDB later down the line? Or do you just downgrade and you go to like a Maddison, Lucas Moura, some popular options right now? And if you downgrade, then it's also not too bad to get to Salah because you can just exchange Kane and Ronaldo and do two transfers and basically upgrade anybody else from the 6-7 million price point. So, think about your strategy a little bit before you're deciding which assets are the best. And then after you do that, you weigh out the pros and cons for each player and then kind of decide, do I attack game week 22 or do I look further into game week 23? All dependent on your team and how many double game weekers you have. So the Son one, maybe towards our bust teams, we can decide who is the best Son replacement from you and from me.
Yeah, and I would just close this by saying a lot of people have a lot of money floating around. There's no Salah, the Son money, you have nobody to upgrade. What I wouldn't recommend is basically you move that money up front because we've just talked about the fact that DCL has a good fixture, Antonio has a good fixture, Watkins. King and Dennis have a double. So don't just have a setup where now you have Kane and Ronaldo and Dennis, because a lot of free hitters are doing it. Yes, you could go there because you have all the money in the world to do that. But then in 2 weeks, you have to move all the money back into midfield for Salah. So my suggestion would be to keep your structure of maybe the one premium or no premium and keep it at that. Don't go into a 2 premium structure because then you'll be again taking hits to get Salah back.
Absolutely agree. Okay, let's go to the final 2 free hits before the template free hit team. So this one was shared by, of course, FPL Bruno and my good friend.
Is FPL Bruno on free hits as well?
I think so. I asked him, do you have a free hit team? And this is what he sent me. So I'm not sure if he's on a free hit, but this is the free hit he would go for, I'm assuming. But okay. So anyway, so this is FPL Bruno. Do give him a follow on Twitter, guys. He does a lot of good content. Cucurella, Reguilon, Alonso, Lowton. Man, Lowton is a very popular pick.
And it is just a bench fodder. I don't think anyone's starting there.
Yeah, and Simicas. Very interesting. Yes, Simicas in there, just trying to create funds. De Gea in goal. Just the most popular pick, guys. De Gea in goal. Maddison, Tielemans, Mount, Townsend, and Fernandez. Of course, he has Bruno in there. And then up top, Kane, Ronaldo, and Dennis. So Kane, Ronaldo, Dennis showed up 2 times. Kane, Ronaldo again in the free hit team. I think those 2 will be essential. And just like FPL Swede, he has the same Leicester players. And this one's a little bit different because he has Bruno in there. So, nothing that...
And I don't see Jota, right? So that's the risk he's taking.
Yep, no Jota, no TAA.
Yeah, so basically, this is the variant. This is what I am most afraid of to free hit, where you get tempted to basically say, I want all doublers because I want 22 players, not just 15 or something. And then you get tempted. And then what happens, what Broja did to everybody else yesterday is, even though you have one game, you get an 8 or 9 pointer versus a Tony who plays twice and gets 2 points. So I'm not saying that happens, but I'm saying that can very well happen, especially when you have single game weekers playing Leeds, Norwich, and whatever else, Brentford. So that's just something to be wary of. Liverpool versus Brentford is a very good fixture. If this was not a double game week, we would all be captaining Jota. I have no doubt about it. So yes, there are questions on how Liverpool perform when Salah and Mane aren't there, but I have no question that they are going to score goals. They have done it all season. So, for me, Jota would be the standout, or maybe Antonio against Leeds would be the standout. We wouldn't even be considering. So how have we gone from having these players who would be captain candidates if this wasn't a double game week, to then basically saying, I'm going to take a punt on Tielemans above Jota, for example. So this is my biggest paranoia with free hitting in a week like this.
Yeah, and even Cancelo, I mean, he plays Chelsea, but what's not to say that City can dominate that game as well from how good they are. So very kind of differential type of free hit team. The last free hit team was shared by FPL teacher, or teacher_FPL. And this one is even more, I think, kind of thinking outside the box. But he did tell me that, this was made prior to Chris Wood's transfer. I do believe Chris Wood's transfer is official now.
Yeah, it's done. He's in Newcastle,
Yeah, crazy. I think it's a good signing, by the way. For Wood, he said he would bring in either King or Dennis, so that's a Watford boy in there. And then in the midfield, he has Lucas Moura, who's also a very popular option right now. Havertz, interesting. Tielemans, Sancho, and Trossard. And then defense, Lowton, Dalot, Sanchez, Cucurella, Azpilicueta, and Bachmann Foster in goal. So, I kind of know FPL teacher and his style of play, and he's very, very... what's the right call? He doesn't think about EO too much. He doesn't think about, safety and this and that. He just goes with kind of what he believes in. So, I thought it would be good to share a very differential type of free hit team. Any comments? I know this is not the free hit team that you would be making, Pras, but what do you think?
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. I'm just going through this on my screen. Sorry. The thing with Chelsea is one of the fixtures is City, and the other, if your player is rotated out of it, then you've sort of ruined it. I see the upside of going for Chelsea players, but personally, I would avoid on a free hit. That would be my. So, like you said, it wouldn't be my free hit, but I do see the appeal. By the way, another variant of the free hit I saw was somebody who went for Lukaku, Kane, and Ronaldo up front. Now that's amazing. Now, of course, we're living in the world where we're dreaming about Lukaku playing both games. Maybe that doesn't happen, but pretty much on free hit, you will never, unless you're on free hit, you will never own these three players in the same week, and in the week where all of them are doubling. So back in the day, if Salah wasn't there, Ronaldo, Kane, and Lukaku front three sounds really, really tempting. But then Watford are doing well, so why would you get rid of Dennis and to go for a Lukaku? But I found that interesting as well. But this is a very nice maverick kind of. That's what Chris is calling it in the chat as well. I agree. It's a little bit maverick, but my advice on the free hit is just the fact that you have 7, 8 doublers, good picks, you're not taking hits, you're already well ahead. Don't try to force it by saying I'm going to be ultra different so that I can be 50 points ahead. Look, if you can make 20, 25 points over the average, it's been a successful free hit. So don't try to over engineer it at the expense of actually then losing out and other people with good fixtures actually hauling.
I'm going to implement a little bit of meta talk here, and I need your advice on this, Pras. Essentially, FPL is a game of total points by the end of the season, right? But what you just mentioned is that you're not looking for the 50-point differential this week, but the 20-point differential this week. So if you're viewing the difference in points from this week versus the points and difference you'll get in game week 30 from the blank game week, is that another good way to look at it, by kind of estimating the difference in points from here and game week 30? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So you're looking at the delta. Yeah, that's absolutely the way you have to look at it. And same for bench boost, same for any other chip, by the way. That if you're going to play it this week, how much will you beat the average by, versus if you play it in another week, and how much will you beat the average by. And that's basically the delta. If you think you'll do better in a game week 30 free hit. So for example, if I was to do a game week 30 free hit where there's only two fixtures, Arsenal, Aston Villa, and let's say Newcastle, Burnley. I've not looked at it, but maybe let's say those are the two. Most teams will have players from Arsenal and Aston Villa, right? Or they will transfer in, a couple of other players from Burnley and Newcastle. What is my upside? Am I just going to get my upside from getting Lowton and Ben Mee and one or two other Arsenal players? That's not going to give me 25 points. So at that point, I will just say, look, let me just not play the free hit. I will also put out 7-8 players, and that's about it. In a game week 36, I know that's a popular bench boost week, but let's say you've already got your bench boost out of the way and you free hit in game week 36, where you have 11 super doublers with, you can double up on, the right City players, the Liverpool players. You can double up on Chelsea defense when James and Chilwell, I know Chilwell is out, James and Alonso, let's say. For me, that has bigger appeal because that has a bigger upside. So you have to look at the delta between the average and the free hit score and compare that in any other week. That's my view anyway.
Okay, very nicely put. Okay, and then this is the kind of the template free hit team that we came up with, and template meaning as in we looked at a bunch of free hits. I think over 10 free hits, and then kind of sorted it out. And also, this should not just help the people who are free hitting this week, but kind of help the non-free hitters as well to see the popular assets that are brought in this week. So here we have Ronaldo, Kane, and Dennis up top. So it seems like Dennis is the popular choice over King. Personally, I do have King right now, and I honestly think it's very difficult to tell who's the better asset. So I'm perfectly happy having King. And then in the midfield, we have Maddison, Tielemans. So those two are the most popular Leicester players from all the free hits we've seen so far. Bowen and Jota, again, two single game weekers that are probably in most of our teams from looking at their top 10K EO earlier on. And then Lucas Moura, very interesting, prospect in game week 22 and moving forward as well because of the Son injury. Let's quickly speak on this Lucas Moura one. What are your thoughts on Lucas Moura, Pras? Because I do have my opinion on Lucas Moura, but go ahead.
Well, the Son injury basically means that there's some games where Conte goes 3-4-3, and there's some games where he goes 3-5-2. And basically the games where he goes 3-5-2, Moura is the one that misses out because Ali comes in as the extra man in midfield. But now with the Son injury, you would expect that Moura would continue to be the second attacker in that, if you want to call it 3-5-2 formation. And so therefore he should be playing both the games. He got a nice little rest in the FA Cup as well, if I remember correctly. So he's basically who'll play twice. But again, are we that excited about their attack? I'm okay. It's a double, and they're putting in good attacking numbers. So if my midfield pick, actually, if I was to go with only 4, would indeed be Jota, Moura, Maddison, and between Bowen and Tielemans. So that would be my order of preference, just given how the fixtures have played out.
Yeah, very interesting. I think Lucas Moura is a totally viable strategy this week, especially on a free hit. I think he would be the standout option after Kane for the Spurs attack. However, if you're bringing him in without a free hit, I don't think I would go there. I don't think Spurs fixtures are great afterwards. And
not. I think we're talking free hit only, right? Only, I mean, if it's not free hit, I would not go to Moura at all.
Yeah, and I will say this about Lucas Moura. He's pretty frustrating. I mean, I think he's quite inconsistent at times. He's been showing form. He's had 2 hauls in the last 6 or 7 game weeks, but the rest are very kind of invisible, quiet games in terms of FPL points. So, not the most keen on bringing Lucas Moura, but for a free hit, I do think it makes sense. So, there you go. And then in the backline, we have Alonso again, Trent, who's in most of our teams, and then Cucurella, who's very, very popular. Lowton, bench fodder with 2 games, as well as Reguilon. And let's speak on Reguilon real quick, because do we even know if he's playing 90 minutes? His minutes have been very kind of iffy the last few weeks, so I'm not really sure if he would be my standout, very expensive free hit defender. But thoughts, Pras?
Look, it's the upside with him. I think I don't think he's nailed for 90 minutes. He hasn't been. He keeps getting subbed off. He's had back issues. Sessegnon is actually back fit, or should be back fit for the double, if not the first, but the second. So there is minutes risk. There's no denying that. But ultimately, you could go for a Dyer, you could go for an Emerson. But with Emerson, you have. I mean, I know Doherty's looked rubbish, but he is starting games, a few of the games. So will Emerson play both? I don't know. I just felt go for the Spurs defender if you're on a free hit again that has the biggest upside. And I think Reguilon is the guy who gets most into the box. Emerson is the guy with the XA. Reguilon is the guy with the XG. You want to hit, if you're on a free hit, you want to hit that game where Reguilon scores the goal, keeps a clean sheet, gets a 15-pointer. Whether that happens or not, you don't know. But look, you got a dream. So my personal pick would still be Reguilon on a free hit. Long term, I agree with people that maybe he's not that nailed. Maybe Sessegnon takes that position and he rotates. I know Baker is not that hot long term on him. But for the free hit, my pick would still be him.
Yeah, for the free hit makes sense, but I'll just put this caveat out there. People think he scores a ton. He does not score, and he does not get assists. Like, very, very few goals and assists. So, don't expect too much.
Do you have that table we were looking at, the defenders table?
We're about to show it. Yep, let's go to that now.
Okay. Yeah.
And by the way, the last point is De Gea, again, is the most popular defense keeper option this week.
Right. Now, I wanted to talk about the defenders only because I think as we're talking about a free hit, and again, in the context of where people are going, we've said the strike force is pretty template. Keeper is template. Midfielders, we've just talked about. I think the way to differentiate yourself, sensibly differentiate yourself, would be in defense.
Okay.
And so therefore, we just put up a few stats on defenders for you to consider as you look at players on a free hit, or even for your team, because a lot of people still have James, for example, or Livramento, who they want to ship out, or unfortunately people like me who have Dalot. So it's we've shared this table. Now, if you look at the XGI, so we're only looking at the defenders with the potential to get you points up front. Of course, when you look at defenders, please consider the defense itself. But if you look at attacking threat over the last 6 weeks, Robertson number 1, Reguilon number 2, Alonso number 3. Now, number 2 and number 3 here have a double. So this is why I go back to the discussion on if I was to think about a free hit, I would really think about Reguilon and Alonso as the two players. If City weren't playing Chelsea, I think Alonso would be a no-brainer. But with his minutes risk, with the fact that maybe he just plays the Chelsea game, not the other one, you can say there's a case for not going Alonso as well. And this is number 1 up here is basically Robertson, the one I talked about, who I would possibly have considered a lot more if I was on a free hit, removing the double game week blinkers. So that's basically, this was the idea of showing this. And a lot, Emerson Royal is nowhere. I mean, he's under 2 XA for over 6 games. That's not great at all. Yes, he's underperforming his XGI, but I would definitely punt on a Reguilon if I was in a free hit personally from Spurs.
Yeah, I mean, Reguilon just kind of reminds me of a Adama Traore type of stats guy, just very involved, very lively, but he just doesn't get anything. And yeah, there's a reason why Royale's not in here, because he'll do 100 crosses and all of them are not even close to the attacker. So yeah, I'm just not very keen on the wing backs for Spurs, although make sure you understand that this double game week, Reguilon may be a great option. Plus, they have the clean sheet potential for 2 games. So certainly there. Lowton, we see in the middle there as a bench fodder.
So Bruno's point, it's a good one. Why we didn't sort it by minutes per XGI. The reason is, somebody like a Reguilon really then shines up because he doesn't play 90 minutes. I don't think that's fair, actually, because you get points over 90 minutes. So for teams, I mentioned this in the last week video, for teams, I like to look at minutes per XGI. For players, I don't like to look at minutes per XGI because suddenly now you'll see players like Lamptey, Reguilon, who are actually not starters, sometimes cameo, showing amazing numbers. But, we as FPL players, we get a player for the whole game. We don't care if he has good attacking stats over 20 minutes. We want to see the whole game. And I know his point is because of the postponements, not everyone has played. This is for the last 6 games that the team has played. So it is like for like.
Okay, fantastic. So let us go to the bus teams. I think we're now at the hour mark. Thank you guys for bearing with us today with the technical difficulties. We are finally here, and and I'm glad it happened. Shout out Az again, who ran home to fix the stream for us. So thank you again, Az. Okay, Pras, we have your bus team first. I'm sure the viewers are very interested to, kind of, not only tell us about your transfer plans and kind of what you're strategizing with your chips as well, if you can. Go ahead.
Yeah. So as you can see, Son and James on my bench. This makes me very sad to look at because they were both going to be doublers. Ramsdale and Martinelli were going to be doublers. And then I have this perfect free hit teams, bench boost team sitting in front of me without a transfer being made. But, it is what it is.
By the way, if Ramsdale and Martinelli got the double, that means the Liverpool boys got the double as well. So
yeah, I've been planning it for about 6 weeks, or 5 weeks. When the first postponement happened, we always knew this would be the game or the game week when most doubles would fit in. So look, it is what it is. This is the season to be reactive. But like you saw with the beginning of this video, we will not stop planning. There's a lot that you can still control. So we continue to go through. So with my team, I'm actually not convinced on any defenders this week, despite having just talked about some defenders on a free hit. I wouldn't go to Alonso as my transfer. I wouldn't go to a Spurs defender because, their fixtures after this aren't that great. They play Chelsea right after as well. I wouldn't go for a Man United defender like a Shaw. Dalot, I know a lot of people will see. I just have him, so I've kept him here. I don't know if I'll start him or not. Maybe Cancelo will be the one who starts over Dalot. I haven't thought about it yet. But my thinking is I just leave James again this week. And next week is the week where I go for a defender, somebody like a Cash or a Dean who's now moved to Villa as well. If Villa have a double game week, that's my transfer. If they don't have a double game week, James can become a City defender like Diaz. So that's the thinking. I'm already thinking of next week, so I don't need the James position this week. If I need to play a Dalot or a Cancelo, that's absolutely okay for me. The position where I am looking to make a transfer is Son. Again, unfortunate because he was going to play. I was going to save a free transfer this week, despite everyone free hitting, taking hits. So I'll have to move Son to somebody. I'm not going to move the Son funds up front because my front line is fine. So it's probably going to be Son to a Maddison or a Foden. And the reason why people will say, Foden, you're crazy, he doesn't play for City and so on and so forth. I still think he's the go-to midfielder. I think he's the go-to third midfielder in FPL after, let's say, Son and Jota. So if he's the go-to, and maybe you can add Bowen to that list as well. But if he is in the top 3 or 4 on your defensive list, and he is going to be my transfer for next week, I may think about just being a little bit ahead of others and going for him now. It'll really depend on what we hear from Leicester. If there's any rumblings on Leicester game being postponed or any issues that may come up, I'm just going to go Foden. So that's the thinking for me right now. People could go for Bruno. I actually don't have that option. So that's why I've not considered that because I'm stuck with Dalot. So that would be my thinking. My captain is Ronaldo. As I've said in the beginning of the stream, I'm not convinced on Ronaldo. I actually had King for 2 days. And then I felt so bad and I've put it back on Ronaldo. He's not injured for those who are worried. He was basically rested. It's one of those things when English is not your first language. I think Ranić, when he was asked, he said, look, there was a little bit of a nigger and we didn't want to risk him. Essentially what he was saying is we're resting him. If I lose this game, don't come after me and say that I dropped Ronaldo and that's why we've lost. So I think that's what it was. I definitely think Ronaldo will be fine. I actually think he'll start both the games. So I'm optimistic on the minutes. I'm not optimistic on the output.
Okay, I have a couple questions. Hopefully I remember all of it. First of all, Dalot is probably you're hoping for one other 2 games, right?
Yes, and he did a fine job. We kept a clean sheet against Villa, not convincing at all as a clean sheet.
Yeah.
But look, I still believe he's number 1. But I do think he's going to rotate. So I will hopefully only get 1 game. I was initially thinking that he'll play Van Bissaka for the Villa game, which is the game where I think we'll definitely concede. And Dalot for the Brentford game. And in that case, I was actually tempted to start Dalot. But now it feels like because he played against Villa already, Ranić might think, okay, let's just play him again because he has the experience of, basically marking or being on the Watkins side. He may do that. And in that case, I don't want Dalot just for Villa and then Wan Bissaka for Brentford. So as things stand, if Son becomes Foden or Maddison, then Dalot would be the one who would drop out. So I would just start with Cancelo, Davis, and TA.
Okay, another point. Last week, game week 21, a lot of us rushed into buying. I don't know about a lot of us, but at least FPL Twitter, it felt like people rushed into buying the defenders with the double game weeks. Namely, who are some of the popular ones? I mean,
Dawson, Kane.
Yeah, exactly. So
The
Dawson,
Brentford
Keane,
ones.
Brentford. All these really not great double defenders. And I spoke to Pras, and Pras was saying that he's just not convinced by any of the defenders. And looks like you have sort of the same. Obviously, the field is different, the player pool is different, but looks like you have the same type of approach this game week. So this is something I learned from you, like as a veteran, Pras, is you're never maybe this double game week really does well, right? And maybe these defenders that are popular really do well, and hopefully for the people who do bring him in does well, but. I like how you always sort of plan for the future, even in these times of uncertainty, which is commendable. And, that speaks to your Foden transfer, because I don't think anybody's been thinking about that this game week. But Foden is really on my radar starting game week 23. Same with Coutinho, same with Buendia, same with Watkins. There's so many players that I want eventually. So another thing is, do not think that you need to get a Madison in, that you need to get someone in for the double game week, because first of all, we don't even know if this double game week is going to happen, and second of all, it might be better to take the bullet and plan for the future. So another question would be, how many double game weekers you have? Because I see 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in Dalot being an iffy one. I guess if you do bring in Madison, that would be 6, so 5 or 6. Yep. And you and I agree that 5 and 6 without taking hits, or maybe one hit, is really in a luxury spot this game week. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, and it's what's more important is, who are the other 5? Who are the other 5 is Antonio and Bowen at home to Leeds, Gray away to Norwich, and Trent and Jota at home to Brentford. Very happy to have those 5. Okay. No problem at all.
2 more questions. If you have Ronaldo, I don't think you go for Bruno, but if you don't have Ronaldo, would Bruno be a option for you as a Man United fan and as a FPL manager?
That's a very tricky one to answer. It's so team dependent. Like, some people, as I mentioned, are stuck with Antonio, Watkins, and King as an example. You just have no option, and you have no captaincy candidate either. People are stuck in that position. Would I get Bruno and captain Bruno? I think it's very risky. Very risky. Okay. He's been completely away from the points. You can get him as a player. I actually think there's no problem even if you did it with Ronaldo. It's fine, because you have all the money now with the Sun funds. So I don't think having Ronaldo matters in getting Bruno or not. You have to look at Bruno in isolation between him, Maddison, or somebody like a single game week who you could keep long term. The thing with Bruno is you're definitely only getting Bruno for the next 2 weeks. Because then he's going to become Salah.
Chris Yang asked a great question. If you bring in Foden this week, you play him or bench him? You definitely play him, right?
Play him, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Last question would be on captaincy. I know Kane and Ronaldo's probably the most popular option, because I think Kane's ownership is quite low still. So I'm assuming Ronaldo will be the most popular captain this week. Would you dare to put it on King or Dennis with their fixtures being so good?
I just don't think I can trust Watford. I mean, are you going to be surprised if Newcastle and Burnley both beat Watford 2-1?
I know. I agree. Yeah.
They're both away games. So I just don't trust them. Of course, they can be the highest point scorers, but you can come back to me and say, how do you trust Ronaldo then? I don't trust Ronaldo either. But it's a very difficult one. This week on, there's a captaincy video on the Scout, and they talk about Ronaldo, the Watford boys, Kane. There's no easy answer this week. This is the week where you have to just go with where what your feeling is and back yourself. If the decision is wrong, it's really not on you. It's very close between all these options. Anyone could bang. Anyone could do, basically do a Tony from last week. So don't beat yourself up too hard. Between Kane and Ronaldo, I think both of them will score around 8 to 12 points over the 2 games. So it's not going to change your life too much if you captain one or not the other.
Yeah, this session's been very helpful, actually. It's been putting all my thoughts sorted. and then again tomorrow news will come out and then mess up everything again. So we take it day by day, hour by hour, and 15 minutes before the deadline. By the way, guys. So
Chris is asking who would I bench though if I had Foden. I would bench or whoever. I would bench Dallo. Dallo is the guy who I'm looking to bench, unless Ranier comes in on Friday and says Dallo is the best thing that I've ever seen. Because there's too much uncertainty on him. I mean, he had a gash on his leg. Van Bissaka will play at some time, so definitely I'll bench Dallo.
There's a lot of questions that we answered throughout this video. So if I guess cheeky plug, if you want to go back and look at the video again, I'm sure your answers will be answered. So here's my team. Real quickly for the podcast listeners, I have De Gea, Alonso, Cancelo, Trent in my backline. So 3-4-3. In the midfield, I have Gray, Bowen, Son, Jota. And then in the front three, I have Kane, Antonio, and King. So I will not be free hitting. I will not be bench boosting, unfortunately. On my bench, by the way, I have Ramsdale, Saka, Livramento, and James. And people may be asking, why do you have De Gea and Ramsdale? Because as Pras mentioned, for 6 or 7 game weeks, not 7, but at least 5 or 6 game weeks, I was really planning to bench boost in game week 22. I was actually really looking forward to it, and it started shaping up to I felt like a solid bench boost, but the Arsenal game getting canceled was the reason I'm not going to do that. So here we have I think the issue for me is 2 things. One is I need to get rid of Son, and 2 is how am I going to bring in Salah? And that is intertwined and related to me because of whether I want to get to Salah by one move, by upgrading the likes of Son to possibly a Bruno or a KDB or someone with a high price point. Both very, I'm not sure if I'm convinced that I want to get that, either of them. And because Bruno's okay and KDB's great, but they're so expensive, and I don't know if they're worth that value. The only reason I would go there is likely because of the fact that I can get to Salah by probably game week 24, right? So that's one of the reasons why I would go up. If not, I'm looking at Maddison. I'm looking at Foden as well. So those 2 would be the ones I'm looking at.
You could just keep the money in the bank. So then there's no difference between a Bruno and a Maddison. If you're not going to spread the money across, then going for any of those options and keeping money in the bank is the same thing, no?
Yeah, I mean, fair. Yeah, that makes sense. So here's my question to you, Pras, because I have 4 double game weekers that I'm very happy with besides Son, who was supposed to be probably my captain this week, and I'm very sad about that. So do I go attack this game week a little more, get Maddison in, or do I do what you do and play with 4? I mean, also I could get rid of James or Livramento for a -4 and bring in 2 assets because Livramento and James are issues in my team anyway. But the reason I'm keeping James is because I want to get to that Laporte or Diaz game week 23. I do believe that, this is my own beliefs, but I do think that the power of 2 Man City defenders may be better than the Man City midfield options because of this. Foden sure can haul and is very explosive and has high potential, but we've seen it season in, season out, and we've seen it in the last 6-7 game weeks. We don't know when his points are going to come. And in December, I actually did the averages over the last 3 seasons, all 3 seasons from December and probably throughout the rest of the season. The midfield points come in such spread out players, like literally, 6-7 Man City midfielders in the month of December of this season. This season had average of 25 to 40 points. So that's why I just think it's very hard to predict the midfield points. But what's more predictable is the points from the defense that are sure to come from Man City. And the only way to differentiate the Man City defense is to get another one because Cancelo's ownership is going to be 300%. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm trying to think for game week 23 because by 23, I'm going to want a lot of players and I also need to think about Salah. So a little bit of a,
no, it makes sense. Look, I think the problem area in your team is defense, because there's, I mean, you could be short of a player next week if there's a postponement or something in your defense. That's where I would think about that, and of course, Son areas to think about. But look, we'll see. Right now, there's not much point in planning very micro This is why we do a lot of macro start to this show. Very micro, you just think about it on Friday, and you take it from there on if there's any more news on postponements and things like that. I would just definitely ask people to think about what is their Salah team. Make your team 2 weeks later, or in fact, even next week, and keep a little bit of money for Salah and think, where do I want to get to if Villa has a double? And so you want to get the Villa players for the double. You want to get Salah in the next week. You want to get City players. You can't have it all. So what are you trying to get to? Maybe one better player this week is going to mean one less good player next week. So every transfer has to have that thinking of what do I want to do next week if I do this, and what do I want to do when Salah is available. And we haven't actually touched on Salah. And I think before we close, a lot of people have Salah. It'll be interesting to get your thoughts before we close on. If you have Salah, would you keep him or not?
I think so. I think he returns very, very quickly. So Egypt are likely to get knocked out round of 16. I mean, tournament football, you just never know. But I think that means that he's back by 24. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think a lot of people got excited after Egypt lost yesterday. It doesn't matter because that basically means that he'll be rested before 24 if they get knocked out even at the group stages. He's still going to miss 23. Yeah. So that's but he will. It looks like he'll be back on 24. I actually still think it's worth depending on people's team. So for people who have Son and Salah, now you have a route to get out. Just sell Son and keep Salah. If you only have Salah and you don't have other, your money's already. So you could basically just downgrade a Salah to a Maddison. Let's say for 2 weeks, you already have the money to bring him back up to Salah. So I think getting 3 fixtures out of Maddison in the time when Salah has none is not the end of the world. Don't get fixated on my money tied up on Salah. He's already dropped a fair amount. It's not, you will get more points by having a doubler. Maybe that Maddison becomes a Coutinho next week for the double, and then you go back to Salah. Imagine you'll get 4 games out of that Salah position. So I would just think through. It's not a set in stone thing that I have Salah, I'm going to just keep him. Really think through. Do you want to have that much amount of money just sitting in the bank and you're taking hits unnecessarily in other areas just so that you can keep Salah? I'm a bit on the fence on that.
Yeah, I'll just to finalize a couple of thoughts that I'm thinking is Arsenal look really, really good. I mean, not in the FA Cup, but they've been looking very, very good, right? And by game week 25, they're going to blank. I think it's pretty confirmed. So you have to have a contingency plan for that. 25 and 27, they're going to blank. So likely you want to get rid of your Arsenal assets by then. I know if they didn't blank, they would be amazing assets to keep. So Saka, I already have a book transfer there. Game week 23, I'm going to want City plus Aston Villa. Maybe 24, 25, I'm going to want Aston Villa. So already so many transfers that I'm pre-planning. Things can change quickly. One thing on the Saka being on my bench is I may start him over Gray. I mean, I'm not worried about that Tottenham fixture because a Derby shouts goals.
It's going to be high scoring.
Yeah, it's going to be high scoring, and they look good. Saka is getting on the goals. Martinelli has better stats, but I may start him over Gray. I honestly I'm thinking that too. So there's that. Captaincy's on Kane. I don't think that's going to change. So hopefully this.
Yeah, but Saka's on the GOAT Ben Davis's position. That's his attacking side. He's not scoring.
Yeah, that's because Pras has Ben Davis. And in the chat earlier, someone asked Ben Davis over Reguilon. I think that's a good shout. I really think so. Maybe not on the free hit, but not free hit. I think I would go Davis over Reguilon because their heat maps collide, and if anything, Ben Davis gets into the box as much, or if not, quite a bit as well. So.
Yeah, my concern with Ben Davis, though, is that he's been playing because, unfortunately, Dyer got COVID, or we think he got COVID. So he's been playing in the cup games. And so by the time, and they have another fixture, by the way, between now and the double, the second leg with Chelsea. So by the time the doubles come in, Davis would have played the last 6 games. And so there's a fear that he may miss the Leicester game if everything is back. So that would be my only caveat, not to scare people. And I know there's a question in the chat as well on which is better, Reguilon or Lamptey or Cucurella and Davis. I think you're saying Cucurella and Davis, and I'm thinking Reguilon and Lamptey. So sorry, there you go. No clear answer. I just think out of all these 4 defenders, who is the guy who can score you 15 points over the double? out of Reguilon, Lamptey, Cucurella, and Davis, I think it's Reguilon. Personally, I don't love him. I'm not kind of starting a Reguilon propaganda, but I think over the double, he has the highest potential just because of where he is and how much attacking he is, and the fact that the Spurs defense is looking better. They're probably going to concede against Arsenal, but it's just, you just never know. It could be a 1-0. And you want those points, and I think Reguilon has the biggest upside. It's a bit like Alonso, right? I mean, why do you go Alonso over Rudiger, even though Rudiger is slightly more nailed, also attacking? I think you go Alonso because Alonso has it in him to get that 15-pointer.
Yeah, I also, someone's asking, would you wildcard out of this team? I think this is Anthony Chung. I'm not going to wildcard out of this team because wildcard to bring in those players, because the landscape is going to shift drastically by game week 30-ish. So watch out for that. And the last thought that I want to dump out here is that people are underestimating, and this is no bias, maybe 2% bias, maybe 30% bias, but if you take Son out, Spurs attack gets weaker. I mean, you have to remember that. Lucas Moura isn't a like-for-like sub for Son Heung-min. Heung-min Son has been involved in 48% of all Spurs goals this season. He's an attacking threat to that team and a central piece, if not the most important piece to that team. So him being out of that team makes that attack a lot weaker. So do consider that that people I don't think have been realizing. So that's my last thought. It's been a fantastic session again, and another hour delay due to technical difficulties. So thanks for bearing with us. It's been a pleasure. Last few words from you, Pras, and then we should end the show today.
No, thank you as always to all the questions, to people for waiting for us, and of course a pleasure speaking to you. So